Great. Hi, Zaid. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic, My3. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. I know that it's the holiday season and people are busy because they're wrapping up different things or they're in reflection mode of 2024. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and thank you for still making the time to jump on. How has your week been so far?
It's been kind of the same for the past 8 months since the end of February. I've been focusing on just building my product
Mhm.
and building my brand on X.
And you've been doing a great job at that. Like, especially
Thank you.
with the brand on X, I think the first time I came across your content was one of the feedback Fridays that you do. I think I saw somebody else's video. You took your time and you like went in detail, and I was like, wow, now I want to know what he thinks about my like my
Mhm.
project, because it's very rare that someone online will give you their unfiltered opinion, but also in detail. So that's how I came across your profile. And I think not a lot of people are doing that out there. Maybe now people are picking up, but back then nobody was. So you're doing a fantastic job at that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a skill set, giving feedback that I did harness or
Mm.
work on because I was in branding before, like as an art director. So communicating with designers, saying something is good or bad is not enough,
Yeah, yeah.
right? You have to give reasoning, you have to explain principles, you have to explain strategy. And that's kind of where my skill set has been, is in like strategy and branding in general.
Yeah, yeah. For that, I have a follow-up question. But what we're going to do is I'm going to give you the floor and let you introduce yourself, because I feel like the guests are the best people to introduce themselves. And then we will go ahead with the conversation.
Thank you. I'll give you like the story of kind of since I graduated. Like I went to school for engineering at first. I wanted to be a computer engineer, but then I was just not committed enough to engineering because, in all engineering degrees, you kind of have to do Calc 1, Calc 2, Physics 1, Physics 2, and if you miss two classes in a row, you're done. Like you cannot catch up. So I transferred my major to a business major, and I graduated with like a degree in entrepreneurship and accounting, which was very helpful. And I wanted to be like a management consultant out of college because I like businesses. Like, you grew up in Kuwait like me,
Yeah.
and there it's mostly businessman is like the ideal thing. Like there's so many cultures where it's like doctor, whatever, but not in Kuwait. We are like merchants.
Yep.
We,
Yeah.
our ancestors were on ships
Yes.
trading, across the seas. Like we
Yep.
are merchants. So like that was the idea. So I've always been fascinated about businesses and founders, and I always wanted to know how to build one from scratch because the same thing in Kuwait, there's a lot of businesses that are built from daddy's money, right?
Yeah.
Parents giving their kids money, and then they just throw it at good ideas, but I didn't see the skill in that.
Yeah.
So my whole curiosity was I wanted to learn that. I tried right out of college to start a business, complete failure. It was a video game. I wrote about it.
Yes.
Yeah, complete failure. But then I was like, okay, I need to start building skills. And the only way I can do that is by reading. So I committed after that failure to read a book a week.
Wow.
So no social media. I like deleted every social media platform I had at the time. And all my free time was on Kindle, like on the phone, on the Kindle, reader. Yeah, any free time, like when I'm out and about and there's like dead space, I'm on my phone on Kindle reading. And when I'm home, I have the luxury of the Kindle, and that was my life, just reading and serving. So my first job was I told you I wanted to be a management consultant, but I didn't find a management consulting job. What I found was a job in a branding studio. They wanted kind of this client facilitation guy, the guy who kind of speaks to clients, takes in their information, comes up with the strategy so that all the brand design or identity design materials are, reinforcing the strategy. So that I always liked branding because, I love Steve Jobs and I was like, oh, he built the brand and whatever. So I always had this idea of brand in my mind, but being forced into that industry and at one of the like leading agencies in Kuwait, I was like just immersed in it. The reading thing, all my reading at that time was branding, design, and kind of understanding what makes a fantastic brand studio because I wanted my bosses to be proud of me, right? And it worked. I tripled their revenue. Like what I was lucky because they had a full pipeline and a waiting list. So there wasn't like a sales team or salesy environment. Everybody wanted to work with this agency. So I had this kind of opportunity to test everything I was reading on clients and see what resonated, what didn't resonate. And, you know, I developed this kind of facilitation process. Personal stuff, I moved to America and then like, to get married, but then the immigration process was so long I couldn't get work here,
Yeah.
so I had to kind of continue what I was doing, back in Kuwait, which was just the brand strategy part. And it helped that they had the reputation
Right.
to kind of get those clients. Because if, I reach out cold to somebody on LinkedIn who's Kuwaiti, right? And
Yeah.
they see in my resume that logo, and it wasn't just the design agency also owned the biggest design conference in the Middle East.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I was part of that team too and organized, a bunch of conferences. So like I was extremely lucky to have those credibility logos for
Mm,
that market, which made it easy for me to reach out to people and say, hey, do you need help with the brand strategy? Oh, you work for these people? Hell yeah, I need help from a brand strategy. So it kind of helped, I was lucky with that. But still, consulting is not a full-time job, right? So I had to like figure out something to do with my time. So I wrote a book. I was like,
wow.
yeah, I was like, what
What was the
is,
book?
excuse me?
What was the book?
So the book was like the idea of the book is comes from this revelation that I had that wasn't really written about calmly, which is a brand or a long living brand is usually built on a very powerful founder identity.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
it is
Yeah.
a part of the founder identity that kind of he pours into the brand or she pours into the brand,
Yeah.
and then people honor that identity instead of trying to change it or own it or whatever. And that's kind of my hunch, right?
Mm,
So I was like, let me look into it. So because at that point I was reading mostly principles books, like
mm,
like 0 to 1 or built to last,
yeah.
good to great, that those kinds of books where it's like just explaining principles. But I haven't read biographies at that point. So I was like, let me get it from the source. Because once you accumulate a certain amount of knowledge, you're like, wait a minute, who's telling me this information? That becomes extremely important, because you're like, well, that's your opinion that this person did this because of that,
Right. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So let me get it from the source. I have like even like I have this, like the bookcase behind me just to, but this stack is
Right.
a stack of biographies of
Nice.
famous brands that everybody knows. They're huge. Everybody loves.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to see what the founders had to say about it. You
Okay.
know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I extracted principles from those founders, put it in a book. It took me, 2 years with like I wrote it myself, then I got like an editor, then I got a ghostwriter, and that was a process
Yeah.
that was not fulfilling at all because
Okay.
you're always looking for something perfect. It's kind of like repeat, like when I hired the video game
Yeah.
agency to develop it and they didn't make what I want. It was
Yeah.
the same thing that like I wrote something preliminarily, then I was like, they're gonna make it great, but they didn't make it great.
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, okay, I need to work on my English. Like I need to write at a very high level, not just, because I used to write all the strategies for my clients and whatever. So I'm used to writing, things that are taken to production or to a market.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not just I'm writing to myself and to my colleagues. No, like I'm used to writing publicly, but I need I need it to be like top tier,
Right.
you
It was
know?
a specific style of writing that was maybe suited for the business environment, but
Hmm.
you wanted it to connect with the readers. You wanted to
Yes,
establish the emotional link there.
absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to have mass appeal, exactly.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where this X journey came in, where it's like
Hmm.
I committed. I'm like, I don't care if I get one follower or one like or whatever. Every day I'm gonna write something.
Yeah.
And even in replies, when I used like in the beginning, you kind of have to reply to a lot of people. Even in my replies, I want to write in a way that connects to who I'm replying to
Yeah.
in like a deep way, in an impactful way.
That makes And that
So I
shines
did.
through, right? That shines through because I remember the feedback I got, and I think that goes back to why all your feedback videos were so deep and personable because you're like, I want it to be action oriented. I want them to feel like they got what they wanted or what they were looking for. And also the content that you're putting out now, it's a lot of memes, but they're so relatable because you're like, oh yes,
Mhm,
this is me, like in the
mhm,
meme, right? So I get that and that shines through and and it's good to know that it was intentional where there was like, okay, I write, but now
mhm.
I'm writing to connect. So that's really great. Going back, sorry, I cut you off, but I have a question there. You were talking about, taking all the learnings from different books and making it condensed and hiring a ghostwriter. Do you think if you would have written it yourself, you would have enjoyed the process more and you would have been more happy with the product, or is it
I
just
did like
okay?
I didn't hire a ghostwriter in the traditional sense.
Okay.
I spent like 6 months writing the book myself,
Okay.
and my lack of confidence, right, was like I'm a foreigner. I'm from Kuwait. My
Yeah.
English is not that great.
Mm,
I need a ghostwriter. I need
right.
these people to make my situation better. I thought that was, what's going to take it to the next level. And then I went through that process. I learned a lot from the process, but it was just a strategy of hope, right? I was like, hope that they're going to make it great. But I had no clue what great writing is.
That's true. So where did you go about to learn that? Was there courses you took or just a trial and error through X and seeing what works?
No, absolutely. So definitely reading,
Okay.
like reading manuals. Gary Provost was has phenomenal books
Mm-hmm.
on, like, because he's an editor and a published author, and he breaks it down very well. So Gary Provost, a lot of copywriting people, like,
Mm.
I'm sure, it's adjacent to the indie hacker community we're in, but
Yeah.
there's this big copywriting community and
Yes.
all their, gurus or whatever. I read all those books too. And then I also hired an editor who's she's edited like New York Times bestsellers,
Love it.
and I send her my weekly newsletters because I want to write long form too,
Mm, okay.
and I write weekly,
Yes.
and so I send it to her, and she gives me feedback on that, and then all the principles, like, I kind of put them in my own words and then try them out on Twitter
Got it. That makes
and
sense.
my newsletter. So
Got
it's
it.
a mixture of learning,
Mm-hmm.
testing, and then professional feedback
Mm,
that kind of keeps me grounded on what, let's say, the traditional publishing market is looking for.
that makes sense. So it's like a full funnel thing. Like you learn it, you apply it, you get feedback, and then you tweak it, and then it goes back into your learning loop. So it's a
Exactly. And
continuous.
it's both professional and consumer or user feedback,
Got it. Yeah.
right? So it's not just user feedback. Well, you can kind of come up with whatever conclusion you want, and you can come up with conclusions you want based on gut feeling, and
Yeah.
that's fine. But it's also good to consult with professionals,
Where
in
do you
my
get the
opinion.
user feedback from?
It's people like, if no feedback, I always say no feedback is feedback. So
That
if,
makes
if you
sense.
post something no one cares about it, that is feedback. It means
Yeah.
what you wrote sucked,
Yeah.
or the opening sucked. Something about it sucked,
Mm,
right? That's where the professional feedback comes in, because she's like, this, and this sucked,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It's like
but then,
it
yeah,
sucked or it didn't suck, but then when you take that and you show it to the professional, they'll tell you why it sucked.
exactly. And then if it hits, that is feedback, really good feedback. If you're doing YouTube, so you kind of understand the metrics there of like engagement, and it's kind of similar in reading, right? Did you read the Jimmy, what's the Mr. Beast leak document?
Document? Yeah, I've started reading it. I think I've
Yeah.
gotten through a couple pages and it is engaging. He talks
Eh,
about like
yeah.
he's like YouTube is its own beast and
Mhm.
I don't want to compete with these other people. Yeah, I've read a little bit of it. Yes.
It's extremely cool, but he talks about, he breaks it down by minute, right? First minute you gotta hook them with whatever, and then 3 minutes you gotta re-engage them, and then every 3 minutes and whatever. And it's very similar to every kind of content. There's these moments, and the completion obviously means you hit everything right, and that's kind of what you're striving for. But then there's like interim metrics or things you can kind of feel out, like, oh, this was a good hook, or you just test out hooks on Twitter. That's what's great about short posts. You're like, I just want to test out hooks and see what's going on here. I just want to test out stories and see what's going on here. I want to test out, so you kind of test out these pieces and see how it connects.
That makes
And
sense.
some things connects a lot, something doesn't. And then with comments, some people are like, like this, and that, or they
Yeah,
ask a question or something. So all of this is feedback that is very useful.
that makes sense. And this is a thing I struggle with, and I want to know your feedback on it. Is when I optimize it for readership, I feel like it's become a science and I'm not able to creatively express myself. When I'm writing, like for example, I'm writing my journal, I don't have to care about, oh my God, is this gonna get views or what? I just write what I feel, and that's therapeutic, right? So when I
So
started writing online, I expected the same thing. I'd be like, oh, I'm sharing my diary online. And I was so wrong because nobody read or nobody like gave me feedback.
mhm.
And I was like, okay, why is this not working? And then I came across the concept of hooks. And then I started adding those elements. But now I see the stark difference between writing for readership and writing for creative satisfaction or personal satisfaction. Do you feel that way too? And does it take the fun out of it or does it make it more fun for you?
I have like a nuanced take on this. So when when you're a designer learning how to, if you want to be a great logo designer,
Yeah.
the first year or 2 years, the best thing you can do is trace logos, which
Okay.
is boring, right? But you just literally print out black and white
Mm-hmm.
logo, and you get tracing paper, put it on top of the logo, and you trace it to kind of internalize every decision the professional made.
I got it.
So I believe that's a principle with almost everything. In the beginning of any creative mastery, it's, you gotta trace it. You gotta reproduce the things you love and understand the principles behind what's igniting that attraction that you have for it,
Yeah, that makes
you
sense.
know? And once you can internalize that and reproduce it,
Mm-hmm.
then the fun stuff.
It's almost like learn the rules and then break them
Yes,
where you can.
simplification of it. Yeah, I gave you the steps
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
but
exactly.
100%. Yeah, that's exactly. Learn the rules and break them and have fun, but you got to learn the rules first.
That makes sense.
And you got to learn to apply the rules as well, not just know them.
Yeah, that makes application is where all the difference is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's where practice comes in. Like a lot of people like learn a lot, and I'm obviously pro reading, but you want to apply what
Mm-hmm.
you're learning as well, And the last part of my story, which
Mm-hmm. Yes.
you're like, I gotta ask.
Sorry.
It's
Continue.
fine, but because it ties into this, And the last part of my story is also starting this year. In addition to building my brand, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I can't just launch a book about business without building a super successful one myself.
Yeah.
You
Makes
know what
sense.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like consulting is not really a business. Consulting is just almost part-time work,
Yeah.
at high level companies. I
Yeah.
want to build it from scratch, with no money, just my skills, and kind of test out this book that I wrote. Like, are the principles sound? I'm in the middle of the journey. I
Yeah.
can't say
Yeah.
much,
Yeah. I get
except,
that.
the building part, like I might launch maybe next month or the month after.
Oh, okay. That's very exciting. And
It
and
is.
I know even on X you were like, okay, I'm not going to be as active.
Mhm.
Time to build, and you would like go away, and but still you were active somehow. So I'll get to that question later, like
Yeah.
how did you manage time? But when you did mention that, I was like, oh, what is he building? So I was
Mhm.
very curious, and I think you're doing like a, I don't know if you're doing this intentionally, but you're also building that anticipation and that
Mhm.
buzz, which is great because I every time I see you post, okay, back to building, guys, I'm like,
Mhm.
what is he building? Because you haven't mentioned anything, you haven't hinted at anything, so that anticipation and that curiosity is in mind.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is intentional, and also I I like sharing a lot. My goal is to control that more, so like
Mm,
I made a decision, like I'm not gonna tell anyone, like what
yeah,
I'm building until I launch,
yeah,
even though I do want to tell everybody. Like I'm that kind of guy. Like growing up, I loved magic.
yeah.
I love learning magic, and I would always do magic tricks and then tell people how
What
I
the
did the magic trick.
That's so cute. I think
Yeah,
I do that too. I'm into
yeah.
similar bow, which I totally get. But something you said about founders' values and pouring that into the company
Mhm.
reminded me that I think this was on the My First Million pod. They were talking about this concept and they were saying the first few people or the first, I don't know, 50 people or so are very entrenched into that value and they take it on and they honor it because they're so
Mhm.
close to the epicenter, which is the
Mhm.
founder. But as companies start getting bigger and bigger, it gets harder to maintain that intensity of values, like if it gets
100%.
2,000, 3,000 people, then the closer you get to the founder, the more entrenched you are in the value system. How do you think that impacts a company's image,
Mhm.
reputation, and is that also like a branding? It does that flow into the branding issue, or it doesn't? It's more of a
It does. Yeah, no, see, what branding is, it's not colors, it's not logos, it's
Mhm.
not names, it's more than that, right? Branding is literally like the power of your reputation, and that is both externally
Yeah.
and internally. And the more deliberate you are about it, the
Hmm.
more aware you are about that meaning,
Yeah.
the more you can design systems to kind of propagate that or expand it and amplify it, right?
Yeah. That makes
But if you're just, kind of shooting from the hip and the latest marketing trend and whatever, and you kind of just don't, you won't last. And most, like Walt Disney, for example, like he used to tell people, Walt Disney, I'm not Walt Disney. He's like, Walt Disney is this company we're building, this
yeah.
value system we're building, this education system we're building. And he was extremely aware what
Mm,
Walt Disney meant to his employees and what Walt Disney meant to the market.
right.
And
That
and
makes
that is high level branding, is when you understand that and you intentionally build out both your internal policies and
mm,
culture based on that,
yeah.
and your external communication and community building based on that.
That makes so much sense. And that's a very strong reminder because among the founding community, I feel like the minute we talk about branding, and this is not wrong, but it's incomplete, we think about logo, colors, brand color, language. Language is also a very big piece of it, but it's still just a piece of it. And so
Yeah.
to think about it at a deeper level, How can founders think about it at a deeper level? What are some, when you were leading the brand strategy, were there questions you asked or exercises that you did with the founders to really nail the reputation that you were talking about?
Yes, and it's, I do it on my podcast. I have a podcast called Founder Juice, and it's what I used to do with clients. Basically, it's the questions I used to ask my clients to get to that core identity. And the core identity, here's a couple of mistakes that people fall into. Number one is projecting an image that is not them. And that kind of comes with like people are kind of their desires.
Mm, okay.
So if you tell them what is your dream or what is your goal or what is the long-term vision, and they're like, "Oh, I want to save the world and the people, the poor people of whatever country that is impoverished," and it's like this is a program that you've adopted from someone. This
Mm,
is
not
not,
you.
yeah, this is not your desire. This is not. It's not fun either. Like
Yeah.
it's like unless that is like out of whatever 1,000 people, one person that might be the real desire, but
Most,
999 times
yeah.
it's not.
Right.
So one of the most important things is honesty with yourself. Then you're like, okay, but who do you want to work with? Who do you want to collaborate with? And you kind of find that creative engine in them, right?
Right.
Like I want to work with these kinds of people. I like working with artists. I like working with
The specific.
programmers, mathematicians, whatever. You kind of draw that out, right? Like what is the essence of their personality? Like for me, like I told you, like I'm obsessed with business. I'm also a nerd. I like animation. And I like design. And like you can see kind of all of that in my brand, right? Like you see the illustrations, you see I love comedy. That is a part of me. I
So the
like
memes.
laughing.
So the
Yeah,
visuals.
memes. I
Yeah.
like jokes.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Being honest and not being too restrictive and like.
Judgmental, not being too judgmental about what you. Yeah.
Judgmental is fine. I like judgmental because judgmental is everybody's going to be judgmental and they're going to tell you they're not going to be judgmental. So just
Hmm.
taking it off the table and saying, yeah, people are going to judge me.
Yeah.
And how do I let them judge me in a way that I want them to judge me? And controlling that
Yeah.
is more powerful for whoever's kind
Yeah.
of thinking about this kind of stuff,
That makes
right?
sense. Yeah.
So it's a very big topic,
Yeah.
but extremely core to
Yeah.
the success of a business. So it is something definitely, that can slip you up if you kind of get success early and you
Without.
don't know who you are.
Yeah. That
It
makes.
it might,
It might go the other way. It
yeah,
might.
it might mess you up, and you then whatever you feel lost or you feel alone or you feel
Yeah.
whatever.
That makes sense. Two
Mhm.
things this reminds me of is one, the branding exercise that you were talking about more so sounds like it's a nebulous idea in
Mhm.
someone's head. And with the questions, you're trying to chisel out what it actually means and bring it
100%.
bring it forth. And the second thing, I was watching, I don't know what podcast that was yesterday. I was watching a video podcast and they said values are something that you want to uphold while giving up something else. Like, it's
Hmm.
that, like, for example, if a company's value is to be brutally honest, that means you're going to be honest when it is uncomfortable
Hmm.
because it is so important to you that honesty is valued and practiced, even if it is uncomfortable in the short term and it's not easy to have that conversation, you do it because you're upholding that value. And that's
Yeah,
what it reminds me of.
there's a dude online on Twitter. His name is Will. He's very, I forget his last name, but he's extremely charismatic guy. He like runs spaces.
Mhm.
And he said something once. It wasn't even a post. It was a reply to someone, and it stuck with me. That kind of echoes this idea, which is he says sacrifice comes from sacred to make sacred something, right? Like when you make sacred something, you're sacrificing other things, right?
Someone else. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this is like kind of the same idea, and 100%. It's the things that you will stick to in hard times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in easy times, it's easy to be nice, it's easy to be kind, it's easy
Yeah.
to be whatever
Yeah.
value system you think you have, right?
Yeah.
But in hard times, that's when it comes to the test.
Yeah, that's true. That makes sense.
So that's where the self knowledge, that work is extremely important.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's say that there is a founder that has done all of this, and now they're coming down to the specifics that we
Mm,
said earlier, like brand voice, color, and
yes.
landing page. Because you've done so many like feedback sessions,
Mm.
what do you think are some of the technical mistakes that you see?
So the mistake they make is the kind of like the popularity trap, and where they think, sure, knowing yourself is the foundational work, but then there's like the overlap, right? You want to overlap your identity
Mm-hmm.
with your customer's identity
Yes.
with their hero's identity in that sphere.
Yeah. Okay.
That is kind of the
The Venn diagram.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is the brand you want to build. You don't want to just build my personal brand. Hey, I'm really into matcha tea. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
no one
Yeah.
cares.
Yeah.
So it's it's about being intentional about that overlap.
Mm,
So it's first understanding yourself, then understanding the customer and what they value in your kind of product and brand and whatever,
mm-hmm.
and then who they look up to, who are their idols.
Right.
Like Nike, for example, their Phil Knight was a runner. He ran track. It is part of his DNA to be an athlete.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
sold shoes to track and field athletes in the beginning.
Yes. Yeah.
And then their heroes were the Olympic, like the Olympians.
And then
That was
from
part of the brand that he created. So
yeah.
that overlap is Nike.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is why if branding is done correctly, no company can copy you because it is a mash of those three and it's very difficult to find that. And once you do, nobody else can copy that and do it well to the T.
Yeah, and they're not specific enough. Exactly. Like, he's a track runner.
Yeah.
They're track runners, and the Olympian track runners, as a beginning market, is
Mm,
extremely specific. It's not sports, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's not exercise. It's extremely specific track running,
yeah,
right? Same
yeah.
thing like if you're gonna just do basketball shoes, right? Like
Mm,
it's just people who play basketball. You can go to someone playing basketball and say, "Hey, I got a shoe for you,"
right,
and it's easy sell. So
right.
the more specific you are, the more unique you will be for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's the
And
riches and the niches kind of thing.
yes, riches in the niches is a funny, rhyme to put it, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I like that there's a lot of work and self-work, mental work, all of that goes in. How to distill that onto like the presentation part, may it be your presentation, may it be the logos or the landing page, because that's the front, right? Because I was reading this somewhere, you have 3 seconds before a person scrolls away from your
Mhm.
page or your profile or whatever. How do you distill that into 3 seconds?
So in commerce, it comes down to pain. That's it. Like if someone is like all the cliches that you hear, like someone is in a desert and is thirsty and will
Water.
do anything. Water is gonna be so leading with pain in your messaging
Mm-hmm.
will catch attention. So if
Mm-hmm.
you understand, same thing with Phil Knight, right? If you understand the track runner's pain, like the things
Right.
they're dissatisfied about,
Mm.
and you come to them and tell them, give them a promise that relieves that dissatisfaction,
Mm-hmm.
they're now gonna give you time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, there's like steps after that on how to convert that pain into money. But
Mm.
that 3 seconds is I gotta make you a big
Yeah.
promise that relieves a specific pain. in a specific target market.
Yeah, that makes sense. Making it about them and not.
That's the specific target market part. Yep.
Mm,
You know, if your headline is so generic that I can't deduce who the
who is it for?
specific target market is, it's a bad headline.
That makes sense. So it's almost like when I, as a user, go onto a page, I'm always looking for what's in it for me.
Hmm.
And if I can't answer that question, well, guess what? You've lost me.
Yep. In content and everything, what's in it for me is always the number one question you have to ask.
Mm.
Why would they care? Who cares? That's I always say, who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah, yeah. So
You know,
what?
like,
You
yeah,
know?
so what?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes
And
sense.
yeah, you have to have an answer for each so what, you know, and that's where like objection handling comes in, anticipations of objections and all of that. Like, and the more high level you can do that, you
Mm.
know, the more empathetic you are
Yeah,
to their pain point, the deeper you understand what they feel and what their struggles are. And you can anticipate all of that and relieve it up front,
yeah.
the more uh, you know, connected they'll be to your brand, message, product, whatever it is.
That makes sense. Which is what, like, that was when we were talking. That's why I was like, if you're empathetic, you're able to put yourselves in their shoes, going back to Nike, no pun intended. You
Hmm.
can put yourself in their shoes, and then you understand what they're experiencing. And it's almost like you're being their therapist. You're like, hey, I know what pain you're experiencing, and guess what? I have the medicines that you need. And that,
100%.
got it. That makes sense. It's
Yeah,
all that's
healing is a big thing I think about over and over again. Like it comes down to me like it's all a healing process. Even entertainment, by the way. Like
mm,
entertainment is at its core, somebody is bored, right? Which is a painful experience most of the time.
yeah.
They're lonely, they're depressed, they're whatever.
Hmm.
And you come in with like something that lifts their spirit up,
Yeah.
you know, it is still healing. It is still, you know, pain uplifting.
That makes sense. It's
Yeah.
almost like helping them forget about that pain for a while and then giving them solace and saying, "Come hide in my world." Here it is.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's, you know, that's the name of the game in everything people do. And people forget that. Like once you become popular, you forget that that's why people liked you in the first place. Is because you were empathetic and you were relieving pain and you were serving, you were doing all of this stuff.
Relatable.
But
Mm.
then you're like, matcha tea, amazing, cold plunge. You're like, come on, you know.
That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
total sense. And drawing from that, when you were talking about that, I realized that most, assets that people develop or the most messaging avenues that people put their messages out on, it's always about themselves and not about, like, that's why you say talk about the value and not the feature, because the feature makes it about me, the value makes it about you, the reader. So
No, I say don't. I didn't say that. I
no, I
always
meant
say,
when I say you say, I meant like it's a generic
yeah.
thing among the community where they say don't leave with features, leave with
I
the.
disagree with that completely. Like
Okay.
I'm completely no. I think at the bottom of the funnel, especially in landing pages,
Uh-huh.
people want to know what they're buying. And I always say explicit features, implicit benefits.
Hmm.
So the way you talk about the feature has to imply the value or the benefit, but
Right.
you
Okay.
do not obscure the feature because I don't care about your promise of a benefit. I need to know that this thing actually exists and you can deliver on that promise.
And how you do
So,
it,
excuse me?
and how you do it, and how you
Exactly.
deliver value. Okay.
How you deliver that promise.
That is,
So I'm familiar with that, you know,
yeah.
that people, oh, benefits, people buy benefit, they don't buy features and all of this. And I think this is extremely misleading advice.
Mm,
And it comes down to like whatever, you know,
good language.
huckster, you know, bullshit, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes total sense because there have been times when I have been writing the benefits section and I'm like, but I want to tell them how because
Hmm.
now, for example, when I was doing it for Watson Track,
Hmm.
the benefit was it will help you grow. That's the
Hmm.
benefit, right? It'll help you grow on Twitter. But I'm like, the the fluff, when you take that aside, I want to show them what the meat is. How do we do it?
Mhm.
We do it because that's our main differentiator. Most people, they do it through AI replies, and that's good. Like I'm not against that for other people. If they want to do it, that's fine. But how we do it is we find other people who are similar to you, so you have
Mhm.
better chances of meaningful engagement where
Mhm.
you know what to talk about. That's the differentiator. But at the top level, the benefit level, both of them are same. The AI replies help you grow. Watson Track helps you grow, but it's different when it comes to the feature level. So how do I convey that without talking about features? I had that a little bit of a problem, and I was in a puzzle. It was like, how do I do this? But this makes sense where you talk about the feature, but as soon as you read the feature, you're like, of course, this is going to help me grow.
100%. It's trusting your customer's intelligence
Hmm.
and explicit features, implicit benefits. I stand by that.
Love
Yeah.
that. Okay, so that's a hot take that I don't hear often.
Mhm.
What are other things that people do on landing pages, let's say, that are overdone, but they're right? And then what are the other things that are overdone and that's not so important and not
Okay, overdone right is social proof.
okay?
Like no one's gonna like you want stars, you want pictures of the people, you want numbers,
Yep.
all of that, logos,
Mm.
all of that is extremely important because it establishes a credibility that
Mm.
you can fumble. Like I did a startup review recently where I was like, amazing, amazing. And then they said they were like, oh, token limit. There was like a copilot is a
Okay.
million tokens. And the closest competitor is 8,000. And I'm like, no, it's not, you know? So like they kind of like made me doubt their credibility. But up until that point, they established credibility up front.
Hmm.
So you do want to establish credibility up front.
Yeah.
And that, you know, is overdone, but you got to do it.
Yeah. It's table stakes.
Yeah, table stakes. You gotta do that. What's not done is kind of that overlap thing where it's like it's either I want to do it my style,
Hmm.
which is kind of cartoony and like I like that style, but I'm
Hmm.
selling CRM software and it's like nobody buying CRM software wants a cartoony CRM software. You know what I mean? So it's that mismatch of design, common mistake.
Like animation and flashy colors and all of
Yeah, it's exactly. The colors are not professional, the fonts are not professional. All of this, you want to reinforce the image that will attract the customer you want with everything you do, right? A common mistake people do is stupid animations that are not fun at
yeah,
all.
yeah,
They like animation have to be either wow, that's hilarious, that's funny,
yeah,
that's cool,
yeah.
or it should lead your eyes. Like
Mm,
it should be a design element. Like it should, the whole point of design is to lead your eyes to the most important information. And if you can use animation to do that, great.
yeah,
You
that
know what I
makes
mean? Yeah. But if every button I hit, kind of has a slider color change, it's like, who cares? Or I hover something and it like does something stupid. It's like, no one cares. Like, you're not conveying any information.
yeah.
Great design, great animation is invisible. Once
Hmm.
you're because it's all hypnosis. I feel like I
Right.
truly believe that. Even when you read, it's
Yeah.
hypnosis. Once that hypnosis spell is broken, you're like not into the content.
Yeah.
You're not into the sale. You're not into whatever. You're now thinking about button animation,
Yeah.
or you're thinking about, wait, how did they do this animation? Wow, no, not,
Mm,
haha, this is amazing. This is cool. This is a fun brand. That's
yeah.
the kind of what you want. But once you start looking at design elements, same thing with fonts. If
Yeah.
the font is invisible, you're not like, what typeface did they use here? They should have been bolder here. And like all of that
Right.
takes you away from the hypnosis.
Yeah. I love the idea of hypnosis because you're right. When they come into your world, you want
Hmm.
them to think about one thing and one thing only,
Yes.
the pain and how we solve the pain. That's it.
Yes.
Anything that distracts you from that, the spell is broken. And now the person is thinking about something else, and you're like, no,
Mhm.
no, no. I need you to come back
Yeah,
to this world that I'm trying
mhm,
to weave. That makes so
absolutely.
much sense. I love that. That brings me to my next question. Because branding is so reliant on self-discovery, discovering the brands, discover it's a lot of human emotions and human touch that is involved.
Mm.
Do you think AI is changing that? First question. Second is we're saying co-pilot for this, co-pilot for that. Do you think for branding specifically there can be AI solutions that can be built that can help founders with this because it's so ingrained into human nature and psychology and feelings and emotions?
I think at some point, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that branding is not on at the level that I'm talking to you about. It's not on early stage founders' radar at all. It's not something they identify. It's not something they want. It's not something they value. This is most people with branding problems are almost like maybe as soon as you get your like seed stage, series A, that's when you there's either a crisis or I need to reinforce it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, you're not investing in it at all.
Do you think if people did invest in it from the stage one, they would see an impact, like a massive impact? And they should
It's
they or
tough. It's tough to say because there's not one thing that makes you successful.
yeah, that's
You know
true.
what I mean?
Yeah.
It's always a mixture of so many things, and you want to stack as all the things you can. You want to like every advantage you have or you can get, you want to use it. Because there's like a chain reaction. Like what's it called? The mass. What a critical mass. There's a critical mass. That causes this. Like
Inflection.
nuclear reaction.
Yeah.
And you want to do that. You want to find as many things to stack to kind of
Mhm.
create that moment of success, right? Or like
Yeah.
moment of liftoff.
Yeah.
So is branding a big part of that? I'm gonna say it's a big part, but it is a part.
Yeah.
You know, the people who when you study, but that's the other thing about studying businesses is the survivor bias, right? Like survivorship bias, and
Yeah.
it's not repeatable experiments also because all businesses are different. So
Mm.
there's always this kind of like what works nobody knows because every
Yeah.
business is different, everybody's different. This is not mathematics, this is not atoms,
Yeah.
and physics and all of that. Like
Yeah. That
it's
makes sense.
very human oriented. So
Fluid and
yeah, fluid, based on psychology, market dynamics, cultural dynamics, so many things.
yeah, that's true. That's true. When you were dealing with a lot of your clients in Kuwait, were they also beyond the seed stage that you were talking
Oh
about?
yeah, it's all big companies. I've never like the only startup companies that I did work in Kuwait were like restaurants that wanted identities and stuff like that.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah, but it's all big companies. I fired all my retainers in September,
Mm-hmm.
and among them was like an influencer with like more than 1 million followers. The only one that stayed is a politician.
Okay.
So it's big brands that I'm dealing with, and
Do you think there are some industries that need branding more than others? Like politician, in my opinion. I think they
100%.
are more dependent on brand versus a tech startup that's just building or in the early stages pre-seed, you know?
Yeah, I think 100%. It's some people need it more than others.
Mm,
Absolutely. Like influencers for sure. They need it like way more than a
yeah.
CEO, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's impact. It's you want to manage your reputation so that you're creating more impact in the future than you are now, right? And if you fumble that, it's you can recover, but it is unfortunate.
Yeah. Do you think in this AI driven world where we're going, brand for everyone is going to get more important than it was before? Like right now, I think for a lot of industries, it's a nice to have,
Mhm.
right? Especially in the tech industry. It is important, but it's put under the nice to have bucket.
Mhm.
But with AI being able to automate and do so many of the things by itself, now I'm like, okay, why would I choose company A versus company B where both of them are built using
Mhm.
AI? They, deliver the same results maybe, but A is much better to work with because they have this reach, they have this impact, they have this brand, they're nicer people to work with, and they uphold the values that I uphold. Do you see that happening or a world?
It's happening. It's always been happening. Like
Mm,
if two products are the same, you wanna buy it from the more fun people, the people you relate to more.
yeah, yeah, that's
You
true.
know, so that's always been happening. But in terms of how AI relates to branding, I think I like AI. Like I think it's fun, and I think it amplifies human characteristics, right? Because the human input is the unique thing, right? Like especially if you train yourself, that's kind of the big catch of AI is that if you rely on it to do things for you, right? If it's, repetitive tasks and, just direct commands, like for example, in code, like list all the types in this document, and nobody wants to do that manual kind of work, right? So that I love that. But then there's this like AI artists, that's extremely cool when you see like the things they can generate, either on video or, you know, imagery or all of that. That is
Mm-hmm.
so cool. Like, and I
Yeah.
think it unlocks so much creativity because it reduces the barrier to entry. Like in the past, if you had that idea to see it fully animated, in a 3D video would take hundreds
Yeah,
of thousands of dollars,
that's true.
done well,
Yeah. Now it's much
and
lower and easier.
yeah, and all you need to do is like learn how to maybe act,
Mm,
like with your voice, and you can do everybody's voice because you can just intonate, and then the AI can change your voice to female character, a cherub, whatever, and
yeah,
you can create like I think it's gonna be amazing, like the storytelling that's coming
it's gonna be.
because you have that going in one direction, right? You got all this AI, amazing, cool stuff that one person can do
Yeah,
without a team, without hundreds and thousands of dollars. That's amazing. Then you got this like crazy stuff like Mr. Beast and you know people. I'm not gonna put myself in the same category as Mr. Beast, but you got this constant like deciphering of memes and like the
mm,
and why I love memes is that they're like a template, like an archetype for a
yeah,
story that everybody loves.
yeah. It's already got that cultural significance, so you're
Yes.
piggybacking off of that.
And when you look under the hood, the principles of it, and the kind of is extremely intriguing. And the more these things get created and get deciphered, the more this like one man creative or one woman creative team
Yes.
can use these things to create amazing stories, whether it's brands, who want to tell, like, let's say you have whatever, matcha tea. I've been hitting matcha tea, you
Yes.
know.
Yes.
I've been talking down to matcha tea, but let's say someone wants to build a matcha tea company, and wants to tell stories that reinforce matcha tea and, meditative, whatever. They can now, with very few resources, do like a series, do
Yeah.
memes, do
Yeah.
all of these different kind of storytelling,
Yes.
entertainment, content kind of things,
And
without a lot of money.
that is.
So you get to see a lot of niches, in entertainment. That's so fun, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. It's almost like you're you're equipping every solo creator, solopreneur with like a ninja team that can do
Yeah.
everything for you 24/7 and
Yes.
at a level of skill that will take a lot of time if done purely with just human talent.
Yeah, the solopreneur is the hard mode of it, which excites me because I've always loved video games, and I always like, beating games on like extremely difficult mode and whatever. Like That's just me. But even if you have a small team, right? Like the head of marketing no longer needs a copywriter and a designer and an animator and a 3D animator and all of
Yeah.
this. Like the future looks like, to me at least, this is speculation. I don't know if it's gonna ever get to this point, right? But it's looking like if you invest your first 30 years of your life
Mm-hmm.
learning difficult things, principles of, like, if you're like a marketer, right? Like if you learn writing, you learn cinematography, you
Mm-hmm.
learn acting, you learn all of these, like writing,
Mm-hmm.
entertainment, jokes, whatever, and you learn all of these things, you can now create content that is
Yeah.
used to take teams of thousands of people to put together by yourself just using these AI things.
That is true. That is true. It's democratization of skills almost,
Hmm.
right? And then now you have it on demand and you can do it. That
Yeah,
leads, I know we're almost at time or more than
we
we're over
we can
time.
go for as long as you want.
That's awesome.
I'm enjoying this conversation.
Me too, me too. Because when you were talking about that, I also realized that personalization is another thing that's going to shoot up. Like now we have personalization at a very nascent stage. There's
Mhm.
only so much personalization you can do, but with these skills, I feel like there's the whole journey of a prospect to becoming a customer and to becoming a champion can be completely personalized to what the user wants to see or based on users preferences. It's already happening with our social media. Like if you see your content that's being served to you
Mhm.
and the content that's been served to your friend, it's so different, right? In that world where everything is built for the user, do you think that would water down a company's brand because now it is so personalized to what the user wants that you might be at, you might be at a point where you're like, okay, there is a value proposition of a brand that I don't agree with, but I love everything else about themselves, but that's going to get watered down because now the journey is personalized to you. Am I making sense? Like that.
Yeah, I think the personalization of data and like it makes it easier for brands to get to you, I think.
Okay. But
Because
what if
because now you have all this data to leverage on your user. And when you do those three concentric circles that I told you, like
yeah.
and find that sweet spot, you
Yeah.
can hit the people that care about these heroes, that care about this
Mm,
kind of brand, and your value system. So
right.
it's much easier to get into, and that's what TikTok is proving, right? Like
That's
TikTok
true.
is, you can create content and not
Mm-hmm.
know anybody,
And it'll
but
get yeah.
still get reach because they're just plugging you into an algorithm where they're using AI to understand your content, right? And that comes back to the memes and templates and whatever. Like the easier for AI to understand your content, the more reach you're gonna get because it's gonna know where to serve,
That makes sense.
and that's where language comes in, and why I'm a I still think education is gonna be more important than ever because understanding the vocabulary, like if you can tell AI, you
Mm-hmm.
know, to
Mm-hmm.
do like a medium shot, and like describe like the cinematography, lighting from above, top right, whatever. If you
Yeah.
can be extremely precise and specific and technical with your
And
description of what you want,
yeah.
you will get a better result than just saying, I want a picture of a monkey. Right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's almost like you only get what you ask for. So you need to know what to ask for in
Yes,
detail.
in
Otherwise,
detail.
like it has democratized, things have become so accessible now that you need to know what you want it to do because it can be done. It just, you need to be very specific. And it's almost like
Specific.
learning spells, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it is. Yeah, the precision. It's like saying, hey, my three, raise a finger. You can raise any of your 10
and
fingers,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But if I say raise your right index finger,
yeah, yeah,
it's completely obvious what I want you to do,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
that's true.
it's the same thing. Like with code, if you don't know code, You cannot
Mm-hmm.
instruct the copilot to do anything because you're
Yeah.
just going to say, "Oh, I want an app that writes."
Right.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, like that is so vague that some people, I've had this conversation with somebody and he was like, "Oh, but the AI will be able to understand your intention." And I'm like, that is maybe a possibility, but it's so far in the future that I would rather invest my time in a precise vocabulary and be able to use it sooner than
Yeah.
wait for the AI to understand my intention.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think I want AI to get to a point where it can almost mind read
Mhm,
and do what I want it to do, because that's, in my personal opinion, it's a little too much control and too much insight
mhm,
into me, and I don't feel comfortable with that yet. Maybe, as we get to that point, I'll be like, oh, yeah, might as well just,
mhm.
you know, let the AI take over
Yeah.
and like build it for me. That makes total sense.
It is a very fun time we're
To
living
be
in. So,
alive and
yeah.
trying new things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
that
AI stuff is just awesome. I love it.
yeah. I've been playing around, and this is just us talking. I've been playing around with this idea of wanting to build a robot that can be my podcast guest if I'm not able to like find guests in
Hmm.
time. Like be able to connect the chat GPT voice to a, I don't know, a teddy bear or something, and
Hmm.
then like make the teddy bear sit in a different room and like get that on
That's fun.
Riverside, and like, I want to do that, and I think it can be done. It's going to take time, but it can be
Hmm.
done. So I'm so excited because as a, I don't know, even 2 years ago, I don't think we could have even imagined doing something like that. So I'm very excited, and we'll see what happens with that with
Yeah, it
that.
sounds fun. Sounds like a fun experiment for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, I personally like went through and read and downloaded, and it's
Mhm.
it's a wealth of information that you were giving away. When you talked about your book, first of all, I thought it was Logonomics.
No,
So
no, that's just a presentation, and it's like a presentation for. You didn't see the video. You just read the PDF.
I just took the
Oh
book.
yeah, yeah.
I started watching it, and then I think it was pretty long, and then so I
It's
was like,
30 minutes. Yeah.
yeah, I bookmarked it.
Hmm.
It's there in my bookmark. I just haven't
Hmm.
gone and watched it all
Yeah, yeah.
over. But when I was developing, like for Mango Meat, when I
Hmm.
was developing the logo, I did go, like,
Yeah, through the
revisit
PDF. Yeah,
things, yeah,
it's
skim
fun.
through
Yeah.
it. So I thought that was, you wrote that in a book form, and then like that was your
Mhm.
book. But I would love to know how Logonomics came about, and also like why didn't you like sell it, because that's a lot of value. It's a value packed document. Like I would pay
Yeah.
for it, right?
Well, it is for sale. Like on Gumroad, you can pay $10 to get it.
Yeah.
But it's no. I've always liked teaching, but I guess Logonomics came like to answer your question and not go into what I like or what
Yeah.
I think. But Logonomics is just after all this, like I spent 2 years at the branding agency,
Mhm.
and reading insane amount of books on design, branding, and then testing it out on
Yeah.
our clients. And unlike my clients that are just brand strategy, with that, it was brand strategy, and then we also created brand assets like logos and all of that and whatever. And
Yeah.
I worked with the design team as a art director,
Mhm.
so I just had so much high level information that just wasn't there. Like nobody, like you can get it in bits and pieces,
Mhm.
from good sources. But I thought like, this is something everybody should know about
Yeah.
logos. And I just put it all in one document because a lot of people think a logo is valuable, and it's like,
Mhm.
it's not, like a logo is valuable for, you know, FedEx who has to print it on, you know, 5,000 trucks. A mistake on that logo is extremely costly,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why they would pay $500,000 or $1 million for a logo because
Yeah.
whoever's delivering that project is putting their reputation on the line. They're saying, "Hey, this has no mistakes. You can go and print it on your airplanes. You can go print, and it will look
Yes.
amazing on all of your assets." So the larger the printing budget, the
Mhm.
more logos matter in terms
Yeah.
of their value in the beginning.
Mm. Yeah.
But then they're also not. valueless, right? Because it holds your identity. It's like a vessel. And you want to think about a logo as just an empty vessel. If you
Mhm.
create a vessel that is not easy to remember, all the stuff I talk about in the thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's kind of wonky, you can't read it, on the sizes it's meant to be, then you also are doing yourself a disservice because as you go out in the market and deliver value, that logo will start to gain value.
True.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because it's a vessel. You're storing all those memories in that identity, right?
Yeah.
It's like a person. Like me, for example. You know me. In the
Hmm.
beginning, I was just a face and a name. You didn't know anything about me, zero value. But as I create content, as whatever,
Yeah.
you get to add that to my name and to my face, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with the business. At the bare minimum, if advice for whoever's listening,
Hmm.
you need to put your logo on like the favicon, in the tab,
Hmm.
and blow it up on your wall or whatever, and it should look. You should be able to see it the same in terms of the
Hmm.
logo. And then when it is in any kind of reading distance, because you can't read anything in a favicon anyways, right?
True.
But as soon as the distance becomes something readable,
Hmm.
you should be able to easily read the name.
Right. Yeah.
And if
Got
the
it.
name is
So,
not easily readable, then you're also messing up.
regardless of the scale, it should still
Be legible.
communicate. Yeah, exactly. Be legible and communicate its value. That makes sense.
Mhm.
And I like the fact that this was a very realistic take on logos because logos are important,
Mhm.
but the degree of importance really depends on the degree of relatability, recognizability, and all of that of what you're building. It's not inherently valuable. You have to
Exactly.
attach value to it.
100%. Right? Like, you see a lot of graphic designers, they're like, oh, create a design that lets you grow and converts more and all these grand
Yeah.
promises. And it's like, can you just tell me how precise and how professional you are as a graphic designer? How about
Yeah.
that? Because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
want to pay for.
Yeah. Get to the specifics first. We'll talk about the grand vision and all of that
Yeah,
later.
yeah, especially as a graphic designer because it's such a precision-based skill. You're not an artist. Design is like the intentional creation of, a layout, information, so that it's easily consumable by the customer.
There is science behind it. It's not pure
It's precision,
creativity.
yeah. There's like grids, there's all of the stuff that, most people don't think about.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Wow, I feel like I got a master class in like logos and branding and all of that, which is amazing, which is exactly what I was envisioning for the listeners of this podcast. And I love that. Wrapping up, I have two questions, but
Mm.
we'll go one by one. What is next for you and what are you most excited about?
Next for me is launching my app. And, like there's going to be like an alpha program that I'm excited about to like share with people, that, I've built relationships with on X and whatever, and getting their feedback
Nice.
before I launch it to the public.
Uh,
So I'm excited about that for sure. Extremely excited about that. We're in the holiday season, so a lot of personal stuff I'm excited about, like parties and stuff like that.
Very
That's
cool.
that's fun.
Tis the season.
It's the
That's
season,
tis
yes.
the season, yeah. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
we're writing all the Christmas cards today, so
Oh,
that's
nice.
fun. But yeah, other than that, it's just exciting. I enjoy. Like, I'm not one of those people who like want to build a legacy or whatever. Like, I do things because I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. Optimize
So
for fun.
yeah, I'm optimizing exactly for fun. Fun times from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. So
Yeah. That sounds amazing. That sounds like an alpha filled holiday season.
yeah, it's amazing. So I'm excited.
That's awesome. My last question that I ask almost to every guest out there, and I'm sure you know of this because, it's the name of the show. What was the one blunder and the one breakthrough you've had recently?
So bundle, it's because it's a bundle, and then how I figured it out was the breakthrough. So it's kind of connected. It's
Yep.
not separate.
Yep.
But the blunder was I spent too much time on X.
Mm.
And it ties back to you, like, how do you make time?
Yes.
So in the past, I spend way too much time on X, just, interacting,
Mm.
checking, posting, multiple times a day and all of that. And I wasn't making enough time for my product that I'm building. The breakthrough is in that kind of time management. So it's like I used to also sleep early, so now I don't. I kind of like work in the night. So it's that schedule that I created. So basically, whenever I have a tweet, an idea for a tweet, I bank it in drafts. Where before I used to post it straight away to kind of get that validation right away. Is it working? Do people like it? Whatever. Now I just bank it in drafts. So I stop that cycle, right? Because as soon as you post, you open up kind of like a loop.
A Pandora box.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You open that, loop, like, hey, people gonna like this or whatever, and all of that takes up so much mental space, and then you go back and you reply and blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just that alone reduced a lot of that engagement on X. That one thing, and then that kind of two things, like the breakthrough of I wake up in the morning, I work on my product,
Yeah.
until I'm tired, basically.
Yeah.
Then I have lunch or
Mm.
dinner or whatever, hang out with my wife, and then before I go to sleep, I'm now hitting the computer again and working on my product. So it's like
Yeah.
I feel I'm moving way faster now once I
Mm.
started doing that.
That makes total sense. And I love that you acknowledge that because I had that too, right? I
Mhm,
would post and then
mhm,
I would be like, itching to see, resulted in, I don't know, did it resonate with people or not. So now what I do is I wake up, I schedule the post so it goes
mhm,
out, and I don't check Twitter until like the afternoon where I've spent the morning, I've
mhm,
used my brain, and now I'm like, okay, the engagement part, it's not like I don't use my brain during engagement, I do, but it's more
mhm.
like, oh, okay, it's my downtime. So I
Yeah,
can relax and still get this done.
exactly. Like for me, I don't schedule.
Hmm.
Like, because before I post, I kind of do a little bit of edits, which is another great thing about banking in the draft, because you get another stab at it in terms of like refinements.
Fresh eyes, and then you
Yeah,
get it.
exactly. Fresh eyes. So I post kind of before I work. I do
Mm,
like a 4 hour, 5 hour work session, and then I
nice.
post another post that is also in the drafts, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And then before my nighttime, I post like a meme or something. So like I
nice.
post like 3 times a day.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
before it's just like I post something, it didn't work. Let me post something else. And it's like
yeah.
all of this, like just keep going. Let me reply. Let me do this. Let me do that. And it was just taking way too much time.
That makes
And I like reading too. So it's like it's not just taking time from building my products. It's just I'm also not doing anything else. I'm not
sense.
reading. I'm not learning new things. I'm not whatever. So it's just
Yeah,
it was the season up for it. I'm not like mad I did it,
yeah.
but now it's more a season of accelerated work.
I love the, episodes where founders or the guests have a blunder, which then turns into a breakthrough because the main thought behind the name was you need to make blunders because that's the only way to having a breakthrough. So
Mhm,
I think it fit the theme perfectly. So
100%.
thank you for also like ending it on like a
Mhm.
perfect, note. And yeah, this was a great episode. Thank you so much for jumping on, Zaid. This was
Thank you. No, no,
amazing.
I appreciated it.
So thank you so much for being an amazing guest.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciated it. It was fantastic. The questions were great. I had fun also answering that, like, because I prepared a little bit
Yep.
for it,
Yeah.
and it was fun, like thinking about these things and be like, yeah, what do I think? What is because there's questions we didn't hit, but I enjoy just answering them for myself. Like, yeah, what do I think the trends are gonna be, coming
Yeah,
up and
yeah.
all of that. So
I
no,
would
it's
like to say
fantastic.
you were the most prepared guest. Like, because I do send a list of questions, but you were the only one up until now to send me like, hey, these are my points or these are the answers. So when I read that, I was like, oh, I've done it without that, but it would be nice to have
Yeah.
those like notes and see where your mind is at. So thank you so much. That was brilliant.